Hi, and welcome to the podcast, Use Your Powers for Good. I'm your host, Carolyn Opa-Mosdell, and I am so glad that you're here. This is a show to inspire leaders, managers, and supervisors to use their powers for good to put more kindness into the world. Today's guest is Patrick Parker. Patrick is a serial SaaS entrepreneur and leader who founded SaaS Partners, which specializes in custom mobile and web apps. He was able um, to lead his IT services company, SaaS Solutions, to over $2 million in annual revenue, recurring revenue within the first 3 years, while adding 24 new employees to keep up with the demand and continue scaling. As a SaaS consultant, Patrick helps teams build better products that customers will love, and by teaching them best practices around heuristics, automation growth hacking techniques, and leveraging analytics tools for increased revenue generation. So today, Patrick is going to talk to us about the importance of developing core values, leadership techniques for creating a successful team, and how being a former athlete transfers into leadership and business. Hello, Patrick. Welcome. We are so glad that you're here.
Thanks, Carolyn. Thanks for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
So, Patrick, tell us about what led you to what about your journey and how you were led to this work.
Oh man, how much time do we have here? I can't. I think so. Before I started my own venture, I was doing Big Four consulting for a long time. So we would basically go into these different organizations. They would have these massive software implementations or custom software projects for us, and we would basically go in and build out these platforms, these systems for them. And I realized very early on that there was a better way to do it. I can't tell you how many times I sat in delivery meetings where we're literally turning over these systems to our clients. And the clients are literally just looking at us dumbfounded, like this isn't what I asked for. You know, they didn't get any type of training. The system was barely usable. It didn't fit the needs. And here they are spending $100 million plus on a major software implementation. And so I think the biggest thing there is that, there was a better way. There was a better way to do things, and I wanted to go find it. And so what I ended up doing, I looked around and kind of consulted some of my other friends that I had spent the better part of a decade working with, and said, how can we improve this process? How can we make this better? And so what we ended up doing was striking out on our own, starting our own software development company, and then ultimately taking a human-centered approach to design and project development. So what I mean by that is that we focus on including the users literally at every step throughout the entire journey. So there's multiple phase gates where we are soliciting input, where we are evaluating that feedback that we're getting, and we're including the user all the way through, so that at the end of the project, when we actually go to have that delivery discussion and ultimately hand it off, they know exactly what to expect. They've been included the entire time. They're signing off throughout the process, and then the system is ultimately exactly what they asked for, and it solves the problems that we pitched them through our value proposition in the first place. And so we've had a much higher success rate. Happy clients obviously translate to more revenue, more referrals, and it's been incredible just to build out an amazing network of clients, of partners, and then of referrals. And so we literally, we grew our business to $2.5 million in the first several years before we ever spent $1 on advertising and marketing, because the referrals were so strong. Because everyone else had that same problem, where at some point in time throughout that software delivery lifecycle, they were running into issues. And so everyone was looking for a way to avoid that. And once the word got out that we did a really good job, and what differentiated us in terms of the approach that we took, people were just calling on us left and right. And so it really took off quick. And then here we are going into year 5, over $3 million in revenue and building. got some major projects. Did $1 million in new business in January. So it's going to be a good year for me. Yeah. But it all goes back to the approach that we take and the way that we work with people, right? I think that's kind of paramount in what is currently our success story.
Well, I think we are business cousins because, and you, as a new entrepreneur myself, you are an inspiration to me because that's the approach that I've taken in my consulting work. I like a very human-centered approach with keeping people engaged along the way. The people who are actually going to benefit or not benefit from the leadership strategies that the leadership come up with. So,
Absolutely.
it's nothing more worse than like giving your customer at the end and they're like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, 100%. And so again, I think by having that approach, and you said it, I mean, by keeping them engaged throughout the entire process, they know what to expect. And then they've had every opportunity to raise questions or concerns. So by the time it comes to hand things over, you're going to end up with some really happy customers.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So before we go on, tell people what SaaS is and how to like recognize it on the street, so to speak.
Awesome. So SaaS is quite simply software as a service, right? There's literally thousands of software as a service platforms out there. You likely use one every single day and just may not even be aware that you're using it. One of my favorites is Calendly because it was such a simple product that solves a huge problem.
Yes.
Before Calendly came out, it was the same thing. It's like I reach out to you just to come on the podcast, for example, and you say, hey, here's some times that work for me. And I'd come back to you and say, none of these work. What about these times? And, we may exchange emails. So you've got something that's a software as a service like Calendly that's so simple to use, right? Other ones that people are familiar with is Zoom. Same way we're able to jump on here and see each other face to face while we have this great discussion. There's literally a million out there. Everything from HR systems to banking systems to, I mean, you name it. SaaS literally touches everything at this point, and it's here to stay. I mean, it's a fixture in modern culture, and it's only growing and expanding.
Yes. So, I had heard of SaaS and I guess never really understood like exactly what it meant. And in preparation for this podcast, I looked it up. I was like, I use this every day.
Every day.
So, Patrick, what sport did you play?
So I grew up playing basketball, and I loved it. I had such a passion for it growing up. I played a bunch of sports growing up, but I ended up quitting all of them to focus on basketball. Literally played basketball 365 days a year, 24 hours a day if I would have been able to, but I had these other activities like school that were also important.
That got in the way, right?
That's right. They get in the way of my passion. But
Right.
no, so I grew up, I played at a very high level, played AAU ball. I used to play in all the big showcases and stuff like that against literally some of the best players in the country and even the world. A lot of who are still playing NBA ball at this point in time. So ended up coming into my senior year, ended up tearing up my knee pretty good. And that kind of ended things for me. So my kind of hopes of playing in the next level and scholarship and kind of pursuing it as long as I could kind of ended. And I refocused on the things that I could control and looking at career options that intrigued me. And that's how I ultimately landed up in tech.
So tell us how your sports playing contributes to your business success.
I think it's honestly everything. It was so ingrained in me just to be an athlete and to be a competitor and to be a teammate, right? And I think that's something that easily translates into the business world. So as a business owner, living to compete with other businesses that are in my market or in my industry, learning how to coach and mentor other people. I was always the team captain growing up, so I was very vocal about telling people where to go. Even during the game, right? Picking people up when they're not performing well. And so all that directly translates into business ownership, right? Into leadership. And so being able to build a strong team, understanding that you're only strong as your weakest team member, working to coach them up, working to motivate and encourage them, and then just to continue pushing people as hard as you can to get their maximum output. So at the end of the day, it's all performance in the same way. So it's very intrinsic in terms of how it translates and what the skill sets look like.
No, that's a great analogy, because it is all about, if you have a team, you're only as good as your weakest teammate. So it's to the benefit of everyone that you bring that teammate up to the level where everyone is, performing at their optimal level. So no, this is a great analogy for that. So tell us, so core values.
Yes.
Developing them, I feel like in your personal and professional life are really beneficial to a happy life in your business and profession. But in business, what are your core values and how have they contributed to your success?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I love what you said about it. It's not just important to do this in business, but even in your personal life, right? Because your core values determine who you want to be, right? Do I want to be a person of honesty and integrity? Do I want to be a person that is known for treating other people with respect and giving people, credit where it's due? And so all of those things, I think a lot of my personal brand and who I am as an individual, I think bleed through the entirety of my company. And that is someone that is full of integrity, someone that is honest, someone that is transparent. And I think that's something that our clients really appreciate as well. I'm going to give you the bad news. I'll preface it, but I'll be direct about it. And then I'll lay out options about how we can go forward, right? Because we see a lot of stuff in our clients' businesses that where there's areas or where there's opportunities that they just haven't taken advantage of yet. And so, one of our clients, we've got a pretty decent sized enterprise client that was losing about $1 million a month. And we were trying to break this to them as we're going through and doing an initial audit and stuff. And it's like, hey, you're losing $1 million a month. Here's what we're going to do for you. Here are the options that you have and how we can drop that number and hopefully turn this around, right? And so I think a lot of those values, especially as you build out the culture of your organization, there are things that you also have to look for within the people that you hire, right? Because every time you bring on a new employee, they're going to contribute something to that culture, right? They're going to have their own personalities. They're going to have their own passions. They're going to have their own way of interacting with other people. And so it's extremely important to look for people that are similar to you in that regard, or at least that possess those core values. So, that way, as you continue to grow, we, like I said, and you brought this up during the intro, we scaled from a team of 3 to 24 quick. We now have 35 here in the States. We opened up a second headquarters last year in India, and we've got a couple hundred developers there that we're growing out, but it's the same thing. It's very important to make sure that those core values are communicated across the organization and that people are held accountable to them, right? That's the other piece of it. So you've got to have communication around what they are, what the mission is, what the vision is, what the values are. And then you also have to have some accountability. And I think that's the thing that we do really well. But the way that we have, continued to build out this culture, everyone loves to come to work. Everyone is friends. It's not unusual to see people hanging out, making plans to do things outside of work, here working at all kinds of crazy hours, not because we ask them to, but they love the work, they love the people, and they love what the direction that our organization is headed. And so I think it's really exciting for me to see, but it's also extremely exciting to watch other people as they kind of come into their own and as they grow, not just as employees or folks that work for our company, but as leaders, right? And so we're able to take a lot of the things that we have learned and a lot of our experience, and we're able to kind of transpose that onto them and then watch as they kind of blossom. And I think that's one of the most exciting things for me, is that I had people that kind of come in a little quiet and reserved and unsure. And now I've got them leading teams of 10 or more. And you know,
Oh,
it's
wow.
just turnaround, you know, so it's a lot of times people just need the opportunity, right? And so,
Yes.
you know, again, you look for those people that have those values and that have strong integrity, and you focus on how you can coach those people up and mentor those people to help them kind of level up.
That's awesome. You know, as a leadership strategist, I do a lot of my work is rooted in emotional intelligence. And so I can tell that you have a very you lead with a lot of emotional intelligence, and your culture really is exuding that based on what I'm hearing from
Very much so. EQ is more important than IQ every day
you.
of the
Yes.
week, right? At
Yes.
the end of the day, this is a people-focused business. And I've told people many times, so something you may not know, in addition to running SaaS Partners, I've founded 5 other SaaS companies
Oh,
that are
wow.
all successful, right? So we
Mhm.
operate under kind of a studio model here. So
Mhm.
when we're not working on client projects, because of the number of developers I have, instead of just letting those developers go, we retain them and
Mhm.
we have them build our own products, right?
Oh,
And then we
nice.
take the products to market. So it's a unique model, but it's a lot of fun and it creates a lot of opportunity. And I think that's something
Mhm.
that people love. But to go back to the EQ over IQ, it's extremely important because you're working with other people. And it's not just your teammates, it's your clients, it's your customers, it's everyone else, right? So
Mhm.
give me someone that cares, that has compassion, that has
Mhm.
empathy any day over someone that is just able to do the job based on their IQ alone, right? And so
Exactly.
we always go for both, especially when we can, right? But it's
Mhm.
not always possible. So
Right.
again, find people that are passionate about what you're doing and about
Mhm.
helping and contributing, and you can coach them on the rest.
Mhm. See, I told you we were cousins. You didn't know that.
Right.
So tell me, what are some of the leadership techniques that you have used to create successful teams? You mentioned you went from 3 to 24, and then
Yeah,
when you're finished, you redistribute people to do other things. So,
I do. Yeah, I think the biggest for me is growing up as a Christian, servant leadership was always huge, right? So always living to see how I can help other people, right? And so a lot of that goes from sports and athletics as well. It transitions the same way in building a team and helping your teammates and helping people hustle, picking them up when they're down.
mhm.
A lot of that translates the same way into business as well, right? So you know, I usually spend most of my days working with about 10 core people. And then they have direct reports of their own that they manage, right? And so my job is to help them be more effective at their jobs. And it's the same thing, coaching them on leadership, helping them understand how to build really strong teams while I'm building a smaller team, right? So I think it keeps everything really streamlined and manageable. That's the biggest thing. Instead of having to delegate to almost 250 people, I'm delegating to 10 people who are all running different
Mhm.
teams, right?
Mhm.
And so when you talk about the way that we've kind of organized everything from that perspective, it becomes pretty simple to focus on people. So I'm able to communicate with these 10 direct reports who I really focus the majority of my energy and strategy on. And then I spend the rest of my time building relationships with all my employees because that's
Mhm.
something that's extremely important to me. I want people to know that they can come to me. They can come to me with a
Mhm.
joke. They can come to me with something serious. But again, I want people to feel like my door is always open
Mhm.
because that's the way that I run my business.
You bring up a couple of points that I always communicate to my clients. I'm like, if you say we need to talk to someone,
Yeah,
don't have an environment where every time you say that, the person is like grabbing their purse or their plant and
yeah,
everything in their office because they feel like they're going to be out the door.
yeah. Now we don't do that. We try to keep it extremely safe. And I mean, we
Mhm.
have an environment here where people understand they can make mistakes.
Mhm.
If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. some of
Right.
the most valuable lessons I've ever learned in my entire life have coming from failure, right?
Yeah.
I think that if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying new things,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of what I tell people during the interviews and stuff is you get paid to fail here, and it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. But it's the effort that we measure, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
we look at the results and we help and we work with our employees on how they can do a better job, right?
Mm-hmm.
What went wrong in the process? What's the way to correct that? How do you identify that to prevent it in the future?
Right.
And so, it has to be like that, especially in our environment where everything is extremely fast paced
Mm-hmm.
with innovation and technology. So again, if you're not experimenting, if you're not trying new things, then you're not learning. And so we have
That's
a
a
big
great point.
emphasis on education, on training
Mm-hmm.
and on learning and doing. So I think that's something else that people really love about our organization and working here.
And I really love the part too, where you are building leaders who are building leaders. And I think
Sure.
that's very important in an organization, especially as you're scaling, because you can't do everything. You can't be everywhere as the founder, CEO, leader of your company. So you have to. That's one of the lessons I learned really quickly when I became chief of staff in the mayor's office. And I was great at my craft and my expertise. And when I got there, I had like all these other people I was responsible for. And so I had to really learn to delegate and let people do their jobs and let them flourish and support where I could and all that. So building lead, and it was the best thing. I was able to go on vacation.
Yes. Oh, I know. And it's so interesting with something like that too, because I tell people, so I've literally been gone for the last 2 weeks. So I was in Vegas for a conference. I turned around, I went down to Bitcoin 2022 conference in Miami last week,
Mhm.
and I got back and everything was still running.
Right.
Lights were on, everyone was still happy to be here.
Right,
You know,
right, right.
great. But again, it's because of the time that we've spent.
Mhm,
I have a process that I use that I call the 3 R's.
mhm.
And so I call it replicate, replace, redo. And so basically what I do is I take all the knowledge that I have, replicate it onto someone else that I want to be in that leadership position, right? Once they have a firm understanding of all that, we transfer that knowledge. They've replaced my need to be engaged in that, right?
Yeah.
Engaged in activity. And then I just redo that as many times as I need to build those leaders and to have those different functional areas taken care of. So it allows me to go on vacation, but more importantly, it allows me to focus on the strategy and the vision
Yeah.
of the company
Yeah.
instead of having to be an operator myself, right? And I
Mhm,
think that
mhm.
especially there's so many folks that get into business ownership, and especially in the beginning, it's when you start, you're an operator. You're doing
That
everything,
would be me.
right? Yeah. See, so you're doing everything, right? You're trying to understand how everything works. If something falls apart, then you're the one that's got to fix it. The whole ship is waiting on you. But at some point in time, when you have the correct staff, you have the right people, the right
Mhm.
expertise around you, you transition from operator into owner. And that's
Right.
when it starts to become exciting. And that's the point in time when your business really starts to
Mhm,
grow and starts to develop its own identity and its own
mhm.
culture. Right. And so we've gotten to that point, and it's a lot of fun. And so instead of focusing on every detail of the business, I'm able to focus on the bigger picture, right? Which is what I'm really good at. So that's that's the exciting kind of transformation that we've made over
Mhm.
the last couple of years.
Oh, that's exciting. Very exciting. So,
It is.
so tell me, like, well, what is you said a lot and you said a lot of great stuff. And so what is your best leadership tip for, the new business or the new business owner or the new leader who's, getting into an exciting opportunity to lead a large team? So what is your best leadership advice for these people?
I'd really say two things. The first would be to invest in your people, right? And I don't just mean time. I don't just mean kind of training, what you're teaching them, things of that nature. I mean, actually invest in getting to know that person, right? Getting to understand what motivates them, what drives them, what incentivizes them, right? One of the things that I learned, I had a guy that was working here for, he'd been here about 6 months. He was underperforming. And rather than just cutting him loose, I just sat down and had a conversation with him. I knew it wasn't something that he was passionate about, what he was doing. He was doing it, but not to the level that it needed to be done. And so I started asking those questions about, what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? When you look at technology here, and when you see the way that the company is moving, what gets you excited? And so we're doing a lot with Web3 and blockchain. And that was something that he was just excited about. He'd been following. And so now he is focused on doing that for us.
Awesome.
So, instead of cutting them loose, just understanding what moves people and understanding where they can fit in and how they can provide value to the organization. So invest in the relationships that you have. And you probably saw that as chief of staff too. I mean, you're delegating to everyone, but it's still extremely relationships driven, right? So you still have to have a good rapport. You have to have a good working respect with those people. And they have to know that you are intelligent enough to do your job, right? So some of that is just proving yourself and proving the type of leadership that you can bring to the table. So, I'd say the first thing is invest in your people. And I think the second thing is listen more than you talk, right? Because especially as you're trying to build relationships with people and in a leadership position, a lot of times we're usually have the spotlight on us, right? We're doing a lot of the talking, we're doing a lot of the communicating throughout the organization. But when it comes to building rapport with people, when it comes to understanding their skill set, understanding their passions, you've really got to listen more than you talk, right? And so if you want to understand what drives people, you want to understand how to get the best performance out of them, you need to know what moves them. You need to understand kind of the root cause or the root drivers of those. And you're only going to do that through listening. So invest in your people, listen more than you talk.
Yes, I agree with this message.
Do you approve this message, right?
Sorry, I approve this message. Yes, yes.
Awesome.
Because again, one of the things that I really was very intentional about is listening more than I talk, because you could learn a lot about a person just by listening, especially if that person in your team is not performing, and maybe just having casual conversation with them, they'll reveal maybe something that's the root cause of why they're acting the way they're acting or reacting the way they're reacting, and then you can do something about it. So yes,
exactly.
I approve everything that you said, Pat.
It's the same with clients too, right? So many people want to tell the clients all the great things that they're doing,
right?
Especially in SaaS where we're at in a bunch of different industries. But if you just listen to the customer, they'll tell you how to build the perfect platform for them, right? So again, it's always make sure you're listening and not talking.
Yes. Thank you so much, Patrick. Oh, that was really, really good. So I hope everyone will, if you couldn't take notes, listen to this again and then take notes about all these good gems that Patrick is dropping for us today. So Patrick, my final question for you is, tell us how you put more kindness into the world.
Oh, every day. So I am, again, big on servant leadership. I was raised that way by my parents, amazing people. But I've always just kind of looked for opportunities to help people that need help. I've never been scared to step in and offer a helping hand, to pull people up, to sit down next to people if they just need to have a conversation. I mean, there's so many different ways to bring kindness into the world. I think it's just being intentional about it, right? Understanding that there's a lot of people that need help in the world, and just looking for ways that you can jump in and lend a helping hand.
I love that. I love that. Well, you are definitely putting more kindness into the world and the workplace. I can feel it. I can hear it from what you've told us today. So we appreciate you for putting all the kindness in the world that you put in through your leadership. And so, Patrick, I want to thank you. But, well, do you have any parting words? I should ask you first.
Do you have any what?
Parting words.
Parting words. We covered so much. I think
Yes,
we
we
had a
did.
conversation.
Okay.
Just have a great day, everybody. Hopefully
All
we
right.
learn.
Well, Patrick, I thank you so much for being here. And well, one thing, if someone wants to do business with you in any kind of way, tell us how to reach you.
Yeah, so if you want to do business with me, SaaSPartners.io is the best way to get a hold of us. That's SaaS Partners.io. And so we also have some incredible blog content around leadership and around everything related to software as a service and starting up and scaling a business. So be sure to check those out as well.
Yes, please do. Check out Patrick and his awesome business and all of his awesome leadership guidance and advice and experience. And I want to thank everyone for being here today. And as always, until next time, be better today than yesterday. Be better tomorrow than today. Bye for now.